Can I start also, Caoirleach, by, on behalf of the regional group, expressing our revulsion at the death of George Floyd because of police brutality. I would agree with the Tánaiste comments that we too must look at our own record of racism in this country. I wish to start, Caoirleach, by thanking the Department of Foreign Affairs and our Ambassador Dalmall Hall for the assistance with my representations on behalf of Waterford University graduate Peter Smith, who was repatriated home 2 weeks ago after extensive weeks of isolation on a cruise ship in Florida. It was wonderful to welcome Peter home after 46 days in isolation, 26 without any reprieve, confined to a cabin. The last independent TD from Waterford took a tremendous interest in world affairs in this House. I have more modest interests about our place in Europe. It goes without saying that Europe matters enormously to our well-being, to our future. Being European has lifted Ireland out of poverty. We are the most pro-European nation, but we are rarely at the centre of Europe. The EU has always been forged in crises, but our relationship with the EU has to be more than a series of tactics of solving such crises. From the euro crisis to the migration crisis, the Brexit crisis and now the COVID crisis, we have not shown any mettle. It tends to be the begging bowl or tactical NIMBYism. We are now a net contributor to Europe, and in so many ways we are an example of the positive influence of Europe, a small, open, trading economy engaged in the world, an unbroken historic record of peacekeeping, an instinct for giving, for empathy, for charity. We have European dilemmas coming at us, and we want to be on the front foot in these family discussions. The common corporation tax lurks, threatening our multinational subsidiaries. We have let the misapprehension go unchecked that these are not real and substantial Irish businesses with deep roots. Pfizer bought a field in Cork in the 1969-1970 era to become one of our largest pharma companies in the country. Steve Jobs set up here in 1980. Games maker Cartamundi, stationed in Waterford, formerly Hasbro, formerly Milton Bradley, has been there since 1978. These companies employ thousands of people and are the hard dogs for the long road. They are not brass plate operations. We expect robust defence of European and Irish interests in Brexit negotiations over fishing, over tourism, over trade. We recognise the unflinching support of our Commissioner Phil Hogan and Michel Barnier in these discussions. Indeed, our Commissioner is to be supported in reaching for a greater impact in dealing with trade matters. A matter for attention in the issue of fisheries trade is the issue of foreign-owned trawlers presently registered in the UK being allowed to re-register as European post-Brexit and therefore continuing to access Irish fishing waters and Irish stocks. This goes against the principles of free trade. Europe is changing under our feet, no longer held back by the UK. We have lost our greatest European ally at the European Council. We are unsure now if we are Southerners or Northerners. Ireland needs to find its feet so that we can be at the centre of this ongoing change, and the stakes are massive for us. My concern here is that Brexit has taken up so much bandwidth we are not tending to the other parts of the European relationship. When our MEPs head off to Europe, it is hard for them to be heard from again. We have a tiny handful of Irish journalists, 2 as far as I know. 2 journalists working in the European beat, Naomi O'Leary in the Irish Times and Tony Connolly for RTE, both doing a tremendous job, but they need reinforcements. Many of our embassies are, and I hate to say this, not fit for an ambassador's reception. Internships in the EU for our bright college students during and after college are very low profile and are largely a closed shop, only for those in the know. This House and those of us privileged to sit in it need to develop a deeper engagement with EU politics and policy. There needs to be more connections made. We have good points to reflect on. We note Philip Lane sitting on the ECB. Emily O'Reilly holds the position of European Ombudsman. And your own party colleague, Tánaiste Mairead McGuinness, MEP, retains Vice President of the European Parliament. We need more of that, Minister. In Ireland, we punch above our weight, but we need to bulk up. More connection, more engagement, more influence is needed. We need to be, and we must place ourselves at the centre of things in the future. Europe was not an election issue when I was campaigning on the doorsteps, nor in the debates. and yet it is a defining issue for the next government and how Ireland moves to the centre of Europe. If we are going to take the future seriously, we need to get serious about resourcing a deeper institutional engagement. We also need to round out the infrastructure piece Tánaiste. Ferry connections from Rosslare and Cork are an imperative for regional and national economic development. The welcome launch of Irish Ferries Brexit busting ships, supported by EIB loans, actually weakened the ferry schedules from Rosslare, resulting in services being withdrawn. Airports, once the COVID crisis clears, will still be needed. The investment in Waterford Airport, a commitment in the last programme for government, remains unactioned. We need to press on with that and the other developments that aid national and regional connectivity. These are strategic priorities. Minister, I encourage you to address the core challenge of bringing Ireland to the centre of Europe in a bold and expansionary way in your department and in the politics of this new Dáil. We must press our case resolutely and with purpose, because we know for Ireland and for our people, failure is not an option.
Thanks, Deputy, and thanks for the compliments in relation to repatriation, particularly from our embassy in Washington, which got involved in a huge number of cases. And in relation to your comments on the EU, you're right. While at election time you don't often get asked about detailed EU institutional questions, the truth is that many decisions that impact on the lives of people in Ireland, whether it's fishermen, whether it's farmers, whether it's many businesses, are absolutely impacted in a very real way by decisions that are taken in Brussels as well as decisions that are taken here. And so we need to have people in positions of influence, and we need to have a government that is connected and resourced to build relationships, alliances, and to ensure that we win the argument on the key policy forming debates that shape the European Union and its future. And I think we are investing in that. The EU without Britain will be a very different European Union for Ireland. We have created new alliances, particularly with the Nordic and Baltic states, but also reinforced many of the traditional alliances with France, Germany and the Mediterranean states also, and indeed the Benelux countries, as well as developing new relationships with some of the newer member states of the European Union. So I can assure you we are absolutely doing that. We're also investing in our physical diplomatic footprint. We have an embassy in every EU capital. We have opened up a new series of consulates as well around the European Union. So we've opened one, for example, in Frankfurt. We have done a strategic review of our relationship with both Germany and France in order to invest in a more targeted way to make sure that our systems are fit for purpose. So just to reassure the House, we have not only been planning to get a good outcome on Brexit, but we've also been planning for Ireland's place in the European Union post-Brexit, without the UK around the negotiating table with us, doing some of the heavy lifting on some of the areas that are very important for Ireland, particularly around taxation. So I do want to reassure people on that. I think we need to be careful not to try to label ourselves with Northern Europe or Southern Europe. We have strategic interests actually in alliances with countries in different parts of Europe in different policy areas. So very strong relationship with France, for example, on agriculture, very strong relationship with a number of countries in relation to fishing interests, and we have a very similar approach to a group of countries in relation to economic management, financial management, banking, taxation and so on, which of course is a crucial debate from an Irish perspective. So just to reassure the House that the medium-term planning for Ireland's place at the heart of the European Union is very much underway.
Thank you very much.